Hello, I am Zachary Jones, and this is my ethics presentation for English 331. Every day as engineers, we make design choices. Many times these choices don't require much in the way of a deep ethical analysis of the situation. However, when they do, it is imperative that we make the moral and ethical decision. Why? Because our choices are of great consequence to the public. And it is in light of this fact that we want to train our conscience and our ethical decision-making ability to the greatest extent. So in aid of that, let's take a look at this situation. The scenario is the renovation of an old military office building. And to meet the energy efficiency standards that they are now adhering to, the insulation in the building needs to be improved. Now, we could do this using traditional fiberglass insulation, but our calculations show a problem. Moisture will build up in the wall and cause damage, and there just happens to be a regulation going into effect in February, the year following the expected completion date of the project. Now, we take this information to the construction manager and tell him that we need to use a more expensive material, such as closed-cell polyurethane foam. However, he doesn't want to make the change because they should be done well before the new regulation goes into effect, and he would like to save the costs. So, we have a decision to make. Do we continue to push the manager and try to get him to use the more expensive material, or do we bend the knee and let him save the costs and pass that on? Well, let's take a look at a couple of the arguments. The first argument we'll look at is the professional code. Many organizations have a professional code because this aids in self-regulation. However, let's take a look at the ASME's code. Engineers are responsible for the safety and welfare of the public, and thus shall not approve any plans that are detrimental to the public. So it's clear looking at this that we shouldn't really approve these plans because they're going to cause a detriment to the public. The building may become unsuitable, or it may lose its efficiency. In some way, it will be a detriment. The second argument is standards. These practices become general engineering standards well before they get written into law as code. So, plans should conform with accepted engineering standards. It's clear that we should go ahead and adhere to this code even though it hasn't been passed into law yet. We do know about it. And then the third is conscience. An engineer shouldn't be forced to do something that violates his or her conscience. This is very important that we keep a good, strong conscience, because if we make these small bending of the knees, as it were, then we're weakening our conscience over time, and it could come to the account that one day we're on a much more important project like a high-rise building and someone wants to use inferior steel. Well, we've damaged our conscience to the point where we might go ahead and say, yeah, let's use the inferior steel to save the costs. So what are the possible resolutions? Well, we might bend the knee. We might let the manager go ahead and use the inferior material, and this could result in nothing. The project could go well, finish well before the regulation goes into effect, and the situation in which the moisture damage would occur never happens. However, that's unlikely. It's more likely that the project gets delayed. We may reach the point where the regulation goes into effect, in which case the company will have to tear out all of the work they've done just to redo the installation, which they could have done in the first place, costing them more money than they saved. And two, they may finish ahead of the scheduled head of the regulation going into law, but water damage occurs in the future and the military comes after them in litigation. So really, there's a lot of possible damages that could happen. However, if we push the engineer to use the higher quality material, then, well, there are no real negatives. There's maybe the case of finishing on time and nothing ever going wrong, but, well, what if something did go wrong? So that really brings us to the whole principle, reason for having an ethical code. The idea is that if we have an ethical code and we adhere to that, then never will we have a situation in which we don't obtain the best possible outcome because we've adhered to that ethical code.